There's a couple of things you need to know about me and my Cartier Santos. I own more than 40 watches. And I know that's insane, but just stick with me for a second. I've got an Excel sheet where I track the use of my watches every single day. And I've done that for more than 20 years. I know that my dress watches don't get used nearly as much as my divers and sports watches. But there's one watch. I've had it for 7 years, and it's consistently in my top 3-4 watches worn every single year. It's my Cartier Santos in medium, and it might just be one of the strongest contenders for the one watch collection watch. So let's dive in and find out why. So I bought this watch at an AD at retail. At the time, that was 42,000 Danish kroners, which in today's money is about $6,500. Today, the retail price in Denmark is $63,000, which because of the depreciating US dollar is almost $10,000. It's also because Denmark is just majorly expensive. The list price currently is $7,500 for the medium model. So basically the list price has increased on average 2% per year relative to the US prices. It hasn't really gotten much more expensive over the years, and it's almost been under the inflation level, which when I calculated this really surprised me. Especially because we kind of default to the fact that we assume that all brands are raising their prices by 5% per year. It's just not the case with this model. It's still really, really well priced. The model I have is the medium model. It's 41.9 millimeters on the one axis, 35.1 on the other. It wears something like a 36 to 38 millimeter round watch. It's 8.82 millimeters thick. It was a deliberate choice on my part in choosing the medium model. I don't like the date window on the Santos. I prefer Cartier's dials clean, and date windows just clutter things up. Plus, I felt it was too big a watch in the large version. The crown is blue as per tradition. It's got 100 meters water resistance. The lovely thing about Cartier is that they are not just about watches. At Richemont, they're classified as jewelry and not as a watchmaker. This does sometimes creep into their marketing because if you go to their site, all it says about the movement is it's a self-winding mechanical. But it's the 1847 MC caliber. It's not a particularly impressive caliber by today's standards. It's got 42 hours of power reserve, it runs at 4 Hertz, and it's accurate to -3 to +7 seconds per day. It's good, but it's not quite COSC. At the same price point, IWC offers a watch with 120 hours of power reserve, and Aquaterra will get you a Meta certification and more power reserve, and Rolex will also be superior. It's fine, and that's it. It is thin though, and that's definitely a plus because that's kind of the whole point. The bracelet is integrated and has a brushed finish with screws in the links. They are not aligned, and no, they shouldn't be. First of all, it would look weird if all the screws were aligned. Perfect symmetry is not always what you want, but it's also a watch that has a history in flight, and planes and fuselages don't have aligned screws. Neither should the Santos. The bezel is mirror polished. Yes, it's a bit of a scratch magnet, but you learn to live with it. The dial is classic Cartier. It's a pearly white with a discrete railroad track and Roman numerals. It's got the quirky 4 that is 4 ones and not a IV, and it's got the blued Cartier hands. The bracelet features a proprietary easy exchange system, which was quite the innovation from a higher-end brand back in 2018. It also features a cool push-button release for the pins that hold the links. It's a butterfly clasp, it doesn't have micro adjust, and again, it's not something I think it should have. These bracelets are meant to be seamless, and micro adjust on integrated bracelets might be practical, but they are often a little bit clunky and can ruin the seamlessness of the bracelet. That applies to Patek, it applies to Omega, and quite a few others. There are some that do it well, but it's still a little bit hit and miss for me. But the quick release was a huge innovation back then. The link adjustment was also a cool innovation that was relatively unheard of back then, and it pretty much still is today. There are aesthetic innovations in this watch that at the time were class leading, and today quick release is a little bit more common, but it certainly wasn't back then. Hopefully you're enjoying this video. If you are and you're new here, please consider clicking the subscribe button. It helps out the channel massively, and it also makes sure that you get notified when I put out new videos. Thanks a ton. Why did I buy it? I pretty much bought it when it became available. I think it was within half a year of its release, maybe. I had actually been eyeing the Cartier Santos 100 before that. The Santos 100 is a much chunkier watch and objectively had a much more masculine demeanor compared to the Santos. I was still having withdrawal symptoms from my Panerai and Breitling for Bentley years, and the Santos 100 was a watch I thought would scratch the itch and get my feet wet in Cartier at the time. But then they released this watch, and initially it was the large I was considering. It was bigger, it was more prominent, it was more manly, but on the wrist it just felt wrong. So I tried the medium thinking it was the women's size, and I fell for it instantly. And I did because of the way it sat on the wrist. It was nothing like anything I had worn until then. I'd been solidly in the diver and sports watch camp. Breitling and Rolex and big IWCs and Tudors and Panerais were what I wore. So this was a massive departure for me. And even back then, I kind of knew that I didn't usually connect with dressier watches. But this watch was thin and sleek and perfectly form-fitting, just wrapped around my wrist. And I remember thinking, it almost feels like a bracelet and not like a watch. But it was stunning. And I hadn't seen anybody wearing it. I loved the fact that I would be the only man in the office wearing a Cartier in a sea of submariners and sea dwellers. So I bought it and 2 extra straps, a dark brown alligator leather strap and a tan strap. Then I went online and bought an extra aftermarket clasp because sizing leather straps on Cartiers I found was just a monumental hassle. It's something you do once and then you never, ever, 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 ever change. And of course, you also hope you never, ever, ever, ever put on weight. What's bad about this watch? I've had this watch for 7 years. I wear it a lot. So we know that I like it, and I'll get to why in a second, but I think it's good to dwell on what I don't like about it. In the beginning, you could go online and buy extra straps from Cartier. You had to do that because the quick release system is built into the strap and is a proprietary solution for Cartier. Today, you can get aftermarket options, but back then you couldn't. These straps were not readily available in all Cartier stores, and it was a bit of a faff to get a new strap. Today, they don't even advertise alternate straps on their site anymore. Maybe they do in other markets, but not in Denmark, and they have no straps in my local store. It annoys me that they've essentially killed that option. The scratch magnet bezel doesn't annoy me too much, but what does is that the butterfly clasp has a little bit of give at the clasp closure. You don't have that little gap on a royal oak bracelet. It's not a huge thing, but it's a thing I think they should have worked on to make a watch with tighter clearances. And that's it. Nothing else is negative. And now on to why it's still in my collection. I still have this watch because there are very few watches like it. Think of a continuum from sporty to dressy. JLC ultra thin, dressy, right? Datejust, more sporty than dressy. The Datejust has too much flash to be really dressy. A Submariner is even sportier. An Explorer 2 is even sportier. Now think of an integrated bracelet watch. The Royal Oak Offshore. It's sporty. The Royal Oak, it's inherently sporty. The Ingenieur, also sporty, rugged. You can get it in a small size, the Ingenieur, but it's also clearly leaning sportier. The Christopher Ward 12, sporty. The vast majority of integrated watches lean to this sporty or rugged or sort of masculine style. This is especially the case when you're below $10,000. There's more variance in the high end, but below 10K, brands look for the aesthetic that's going to move most product, and that leads many of them to lean to the sporty side in terms of aesthetic. They just get bigger and chunkier and more shiny and more sunray and all that kind of stuff. In recent years, that's changed a little bit. Christopher Ward has the 660, which is trying to be a little bit more restrained. The main ultra thin is also dressier, but still the sporty space is where the majority of options are. But not the Cartier. Especially the medium model with its thinness and overall smaller proportions just leans far more towards a dressy watch. But it's not a dressy watch. It's not like a JLC ultra thin. It's not the ultimate expression of restraint. It's square. That's a thing that draws attention. It's got an ultra polished bezel that draws attention. The dial isn't meteorite or sunray or anything fancy, but it's got much more going on than most classic dress watches. So it's not quite sporty, but it's also not quite dressy. And you could say it's versatile, but I prefer to call it a chameleon watch. Because if you throw on a gloss black leather, it's so thin and so restrained that it's perfect with a three-piece suit and, cufflinks and polished black Oxfords. But then throw it on the steel bracelet with jeans and it's a statement. And it's because there are two things, in my opinion, that define your style, at least initially. It's your shoes and your watch. Now, maybe when you get to be one of those pity Uomo style people, then there's more to it. But for simpletons like me, It's the shoes and the watch. Just picture an outfit of jeans and a t-shirt and New Balance sneakers. You got that picture, right? Now replace the sneakers with loafers or with a pair of Red Wing boots. Consider how little those shoes make up in terms of real estate and how much they, relative to that, impact the look of the overall style. Now do the same with jeans, a t-shirt, and a Black Bay 41. It's pretty much middle of the road. That watch is a little bit New Balance-y in this context. Then throw on a Panerai. That makes a huge difference, right? So does the Santos. I've learned that the Santos, for me at least, can completely transform the feel I have in a particular outfit. And it might sound pretentious, and I'm not a style icon, but it's one of the few watches that can change the feel of an outfit without totally dominating it. When you put on a Royal Oak Offshore, it's a watch that potentially dominates. So does a full gold Rolex Day-Date. But I consistently pick the Santos because it makes me feel different. It gives me and my look a twist of difference. I can feel refined when I wear this watch. I feel not like everybody else when I wear this watch. I can feel artistic and creative and, like a person that reads 18th century Russian literature when wearing this watch. And I can also feel like a rebel with this watch. There's just something inherently paradoxical to wearing this watch while wearing, hiking boots in the woods. And I can also feel just like the dude. To me, it's actually one of the most manly watches I have, because a real man is confident in his choices. And I know there will be comments in this section about, oh, it's just for girls, dude. And it'll come from some protein-chugging meathead who has nothing else to say.
Awesome. I love protein.
I know you love protein. I love protein too.
Yeah, protein rocks.
Are you guys talking about protein? I love protein. I love protein too.
We know you love protein. Protein rocks.
Awesome. Protein rocks.
Protein.
Protein. Protein.
Protein.
Protein. Protein.
A real man doesn't care what other people think of their choices and just wears what they like. This watch just has a confidence to it that imbues itself onto the wearer. And like I said, it's not just about being versatile. Lots of watches are versatile. The Omega Speedmaster is incredibly versatile. It's a strap monster, NATO, leather, rubber, metal, anything goes. But the watch never really changes its character. It's always the watch that went to the moon. But this watch, the Santos, even without changing the bracelet, it can be anything. It's a chameleon. It's refined and restrained. It's confident. It's showy. It's intellectual, or it's irreverent. You name it, this watch does it for me. For me, the watch I wear is, of course, about the looks. But more than that, it's about matching to how I feel and about shaping a little bit of my persona for the day. A sub can't do that for me. A Speedmaster can't either. FXD from Tudor can't either, because an FXD is about being outdoorsy and about being physical and about being active. Even the Datejust is kind of locked in. Those watches can change their look, but they don't really change their nature. And this one can, and that's why I keep coming back to it. When all else fails, I go for the Santos. 7 years in, this watch is still going strong and is showing no signs of stopping. I love it. And yes, if I had to choose one watch or suggest one other, this one would absolutely be a strong contender. But please don't force me to choose. Now, who else has the Santos? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.